My name is Josephine Marchetti. Everyone calls me Josie. I'm 34 years old, last Thanksgiving, at my sister's house, in front of 19 members of my family. My mother set down her fork, gathered the whole table with her eyes, and asked me how it felt to be a freeloader. She had a glass of my sister's good wine in one hand and a chestnut leather bag on her arm, and she made absolutely sure everybody was watching before she said my full name. Here's what nobody at that table knew. In the pocket of my coat, hanging on the hook by the door, was a plastic hospital bracelet with my mother's name printed on it. She gave it to me herself, 4 years earlier, not as a keepsake, as a warning. I'd been carrying it ever since. And for 4 years, I thought I carried it out of guilt. 6 days before that dinner, I had signed a form at a leasing office that I already knew was going to end something. When I finally answered her, my father stood up so fast his chair barked against my sister's floor, and the question he asked next broke this family into pieces that have not gone back together. My sister found out what she'd been paying for 11 years, and it was never money. And I found out what was sitting at the bottom of a spreadsheet I had opened 1,000 times and never once scrolled down. That dinner wasn't the ending. In my line of work, we'd call it the intake form. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally say the loud thing. If you've ever held a secret to keep the peace, tell me in the comments and hit subscribe. Stay with me, because that bracelet comes back out on that table. And when it does, my mother stops talking for the first time in 34 years. Let me back up. I'm a pediatric ICU nurse, night shift, 10 years. Parkview Regional here in Fort Wayne. I live in a studio on Fairfield Avenue, $690 a month. One window facing a parking lot and a radiator that clanks like somebody's knocking. Dinner most nights is buttered noodles at 2 in the morning. And I want to be clear, because people hear that and picture something sad. I make very good buttered noodles. Black pepper, a little parmesan, an egg cracked in at the end. It isn't a tragedy. It's just what dinner costs when the rest of your paycheck already has somewhere to be. Here's the part that matters. I am good at my job. 2 Octobers ago, I had a 4-year-old with a fever nobody was worried about. And something in the way her capillary refill dragged made me call it before the monitor did. Septic shock. We caught it early enough that she went home in 9 days with a stuffed rabbit and no lasting damage. I know how to read a number that doesn't match the patient. I have built an entire career on it. I am very good at reading numbers that belong to other people. On the first of every month, at 5 o'clock in the morning, $1,847 left my checking account. Automatic, quiet. I set it for that hour on purpose. Back when I set it up, because 5 a.m. is when I'm prepping handoff and my hands are full and my phone is in a locker 2 floors down. You don't schedule a payment for an hour you can't watch unless some part of you already knows what you'd see. It took me 6 years to hear what my own timestamp was telling me. In my banking app, there was a savings folder. I'd named the porch fund, not a mansion, not columns, a little house with a porch and something to sit on, where the door locks behind a person nobody can invoice. 4 years of doubles should have filled it twice. It stayed shallow, like a tub with the drain cracked open. And every time I got close to asking why, I heard my mother's voice, the same sentence she'd been handing me since I was old enough to hold a birthday card. Familia is a ledger, Josephine. Everybody writes in it. She said it the way other mothers say drive safe. I never heard it as a warning. You don't hear an accent when it's the one you grew up speaking. It started 8 years ago, 2 years after my parents' divorce. I was 26. She called me over on a Tuesday night, sat me down at her kitchen table, and cried in a way I had never seen her cry. Hands shaking, mascara gone. Her voice came out small enough that I had to lean in to catch it. "Your father left me with nothing. Josie, nothing. I have $11 until Friday." I drove to the grocery store on Coliseum that same night and loaded a card for her, $200. And I felt useful in a way I had never once felt with my mother. And I want to be honest about that, because it's the part that made everything after it possible. That was the first domino. It did not feel like a domino. It felt like finally being a good daughter. A year later, her car insurance lapsed, and I picked it up, because my mother driving uninsured on the bypass scared me more than the bill did. The year after that, she found an apartment she loved, Chandler Ridge, gas fireplace in the lobby, fountain out front, and she couldn't qualify on her own income. So I signed as her guarantor, $1,310 a month, folded into the 5A draft. She had one condition. She gripped my wrist across the table when she said it, hard enough that I looked down at her hand. "Not one word to your father. Not one. Josephine." Now, people ask me why I didn't simply call my dad and settle it. Here is my answer. I did, once, year 2. I sat in her kitchen and told her calmly, the way I'd tell any patient's family anything, that I was going to call Dad and hear his side, that I wasn't accusing her of a thing, that I just needed the numbers to make sense. 48 hours later, my mother was admitted to Lutheran with a blood pressure of 178/104. I need you to understand something, because the next 6 years turn on this hinge. It was not fake. There was a room. There was a chart. There were 3 sticks before they got a line into her left hand. And I know that because I stood there and watched, and because I am a nurse, and because I read my own mother's flow sheet at the foot of her bed like it belonged to somebody else's family. The numbers were real. My entire profession is built on trusting numbers. And my mother had just learned she could hand me one. The resident used a phrase I would hear quoted back to me for 4 years afterward, stress-induced hypertensive episode. When they discharged her, she worked the plastic bracelet off her wrist, took my hand, and pressed it into my palm. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. I never tried again. Not because I'd promised her, because I had learned the price, and because I could never prove I hadn't caused it. That's the part nobody sees from the outside. It isn't loyalty that keeps you paying. It's the 48 hours you can't rule out. You don't need bars on a cage if you think the floor might give. So I kept her secret, and I kept her rent. And I got very good at not thinking, which is a skill you can get frighteningly good at. There's one more thing I have to correct, because people always assume I wasn't counting. I was counting. 4 months in, I opened a spreadsheet, date, amount, category, note. I updated it the first week of every month for 5 years and 8 months, the same way I chart a patient, cleanly, no commentary, on to the next room. I named the file temporary.xlsx. I named it that because every year I told myself this was almost over. I never renamed it. And in 5 years and 8 months, I never once scrolled to the bottom of the column. A nurse can chart a patient all week and still not read the trend line. Writing the number down is not the same thing as making the diagnosis. Sometimes writing it down is exactly how you avoid making it. Before I go on, I want to ask you something, and I'd like an honest answer. Has someone in your family ever gotten sick at exactly the right moment? Not faking, real, documented, hospital bracelet sick, but at the perfect time, in a way you could never prove and never forgive yourself for suspecting? Type the word timing in the comments. You don't have to explain it. I'd just like to know how many of us are out here. There is a woman on my unit named Ruth Ann Sobieski. Everybody calls her Ruthie. She is 66 years old. She has worked nights for 31 years. She has been divorced twice, and she wears orange Crocs that violate at least 2 hospital policies nobody has ever had the nerve to enforce. Ruthie is not soft. Ruthie is the one who tells you your charting is sloppy in front of the new residents. But she buried her own mother in 2009 and the year before that. Her mother emptied Ruthie's 403B down to $400 for a timeshare in Branson. So Ruthie knows the shape of a certain kind of daughter from across a break room. It was 3 a.m, vending machine coffee. I was standing at the counter finishing a transfer on my phone, and I didn't hide the screen fast enough. She didn't ask what it was. She said this instead. "Honey, I have watched you start a line on a kid who was fighting you with both fists while his mother screamed in your ear. You are not stupid. You were trained. Those are 2 different words, and I need you to hear the difference right now, because every single person in your life is about to use the wrong one." I said something about it being complicated. She kept going. Training comes off. That's the good news. And it's real. The bad news is the years don't come back. And nobody hands them to you at the end for good behavior. Then she took her coffee and went to check on room 9, because Ruthie does not stand around waiting to be thanked. That Saturday, I drove out to my dad's for breaks. My father is Ed Marchetti. He's 67, a retired tool and die man, 40 years at the same shop before it closed. He says maybe 40 words a day, and he will drive an hour to change your pads on a Saturday. That's how he loves people. He puts your car up on ramps, disappears under it, and slides out with grease to his elbows and a diagnosis. He was wiping a caliper with a rag, not even looking at me, when he said the sentence that started the earthquake. Hard to picture your mother struggling. Whatever Bunny's telling people, your mother's set. I saw to it. Set. He said it the way you'd say a fact about concrete. I was holding a socket wrench I'd forgotten I was holding. 2 people I loved were describing the same divorce, and one of them had told me she had $11 until Friday. So I asked, out loud, "Set how, Dad?" And here's the thing I did not expect. He stopped. Not the way people stop when they're covering. He looked at the caliper in his hands for a while, and when he answered, his voice had something in it I'd never heard from him. The sound of a man reading a rule he does not agree with. There's language in the decree. I don't get to discuss the terms. Not with Bunny, not with your sister, not with you. Dad, that's the deal I signed. Josie, I keep my word or I'm not worth much. He wasn't hiding it from me. He had been paid, in a courtroom, to hold it. I want to sit in that for a second, because for 6 years people have asked me why I didn't just go to my father. I went. I stood in his driveway in November, and I asked him directly. And the answer was a confidentiality clause in a dissolution agreement, signed 8 years earlier in a county courthouse, by a man who does not break his word. There was a second question sitting in my mouth, round and heavy as a marble. What did she get? But if I asked it, he'd ask why I was asking. And 6 years would come down on a Saturday afternoon between the brake pads and the wheel well. So I swallowed the marble. My sister was no help either. And that was my doing. Teresa, Tess, is 38, an accountant for the school district, married to Doug, 2 kids. Whenever I hinted that Mom was struggling, she'd sigh into the phone. Mom's fine, Joe. Mom's been dying dramatically since the second Bush administration. Don't let her run you. Easy to say when you're not the one holding the grocery card. I never corrected her. Correcting her meant explaining. Explaining meant breaking the one rule. So my father couldn't tell me, my sister didn't believe me, and I didn't tell either of them anything. That's not one secret. That's 3 people in 3 rooms. And my mother had the only key. In September, I took care of a 9-year-old named Marisol, poorly controlled asthma, 3rd admission in 14 months. She was small for 9, and she apologized every time she coughed. I got her stable, and then I did what I'm trained to do, which is read the numbers underneath the numbers. Her controller inhaler was being stretched, not missed, stretched, half doses, spaced out, made to last. And when I pulled the financial screen, her supplemental security income was routing straight to a landlord. Her disability money was paying the rent. Her medicine was the flexible part. In Indiana, a nurse is a mandated reporter, code 31-33-5-1. I made the call from the alcove by the medroom with the door propped open with my foot. 4 minutes, start to finish. My voice did not shake. My hands did not shake. I gave the intake worker dates, dose counts, deposit patterns, and the name of the pharmacy. And I did not hesitate for 1 second, because a child was being spent. Then I clocked out, walked to my car in the north lot, sat down, opened my banking app, and sent my mother $1,847. Ruthie was standing at the smoking bench when I pulled out. She raised 2 fingers off her coffee lid. You filed that in 4 minutes flat. It's my job. That's all she said. She let me drive away with it. 2 weeks later, Barb Linkfist called me, my realtor, retired school teacher, laugh like a screen door. There was a little place on Sycamore coming up under market. Estate sale, motivated family, needed earnest money inside 5 days. This is the one that doesn't wait. Josie. I did the math at my counter at 2 in the morning on the back of a pharmacy receipt. I could make it work. Barely. If I skipped 1 month, 1. The first came, 5A, me came. The transfer went out on time, obedient, while I was 2 floors up hanging an antibiotic. The house sold in 48 hours to a young couple who, Barb reported, cried in the kitchen. I told her congratulations, and I meant almost all of it. Then, on a Thursday just past midnight, my cousin Dana texted me a screenshot, 3 question marks, and a single line, "Wait, isn't this your mom?" I opened it on my break with my back against the supply room shelving. Sand, turquoise water, a swim-up bar, my mother in a straw hat, clinking a fishbowl cocktail against my Aunt Bunny's. My mother on a catamaran, scarf streaming, laughing with her whole head thrown back. The album was posted to the family group for everyone to admire. 6 days in Riviera Maya, captioned sister's trip, long overdue. I did the timeline without wanting to. Those 6 days were the exact week, 1 month earlier, that my mother had told me, voice small, so brave about it, that she'd be at a church retreat down in Brown County. Someplace cheap. Don't worry about me. I had offered to cover the retreat fee, she said. You do enough, sweetheart. And I hung up, feeling guilty that she felt guilty. Standing in that supply room, I reached for every explanation a loyal daughter can grab. Bunny paid. It was a gift. The photos are old. Then I got to the 7th picture. Hotel bed, white duvet, and sitting on it like a member of the family. A chestnut leather bag. I had seen that bag 3 weeks earlier. I had watched my mother slide it behind her coats with the heel of her shoe. Smooth as a dance step, While I stood in her hallway transferring her $600 for a medical bill, she waved at me folded like a fan. Here's the thing about nurses. When a reading doesn't match the patient, we don't argue with the machine and we don't argue with our gut. We take it again, by hand, at the source. So I didn't call her. I didn't text Bunny. I finished my shift, meds passed, vitals charted. One scared 7-year-old walked back to sleep at 4:15. Then I drove home through empty streets, sat down at my counter, and opened my laptop. I did not make a new spreadsheet. I want to be precise about that, because it matters. I opened temporary.xlsx, 5 years and 8 months of my own statements. Nothing stolen, nothing snooped, my money, my history, my own 5A. And for the first time, I put my finger on the trackpad and scrolled down to the bottom of the column. $106,400. I didn't feel rage. Rage came later, and never the way you'd think. What I felt was closer to standing at a light box, finally seeing the fracture that explains 6 years of limping. I did not go to the leasing office to investigate anything. I want that on the record, because of what happened. I went for the most boring reason a person can have. I wanted to know the exact date my obligation ended. That's all. I had signed as guarantor 4 years earlier, and I wanted to know when I got to stop being one. Chandler Ridge smells like cinnamon pine cones in November. Gas fireplace, glossy floors, a player piano going for nobody at 11 in the morning. Denise Okafor manages the office, and she has always been lovely to me. Because to Denise, I am not the daughter. I'm the account. The checks have my name on them. She waved me over and started typing. Sure, let me pull it. Okay, you'd be released at the end of the current term. That's the amended guarantee you signed 14 months ago, when your mom moved into the Chandler 2-bedroom. We emailed you the copy. I did not react. I want to tell you what my face did, because I've had a lot of practice. It's the same face I use when a lab result comes back that cannot possibly be right, except it is, and the family is standing 4 feet away watching me read it. Could I see it? She printed it. 2 pages, still warm. The signature was not mine. I need to explain how I knew that fast, because it wasn't a feeling. My J has a closed loop at the bottom. Every J I have made since the 8th grade, on every chart and every consent form, and every school picture, closes at the bottom. The J on that page was open. Someone had drawn it looking at my handwriting instead of writing it. Then I got to the contact line. The email address was J. Marchetti. Mine is J.Marchetti, 1 period. 14 months of correspondence about a lease I was legally responsible for had been going to an inbox that was off by a single keystroke. And then I did the thing that made it real. I opened my scheduling app right there at the counter and looked up the date on the signature line. A Tuesday in September. I worked that night, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 12 hours. My initials on 11 pages of charting at Parkview, while my name was being signed on a lease 8 miles away. Denise was still cheerful. She had no idea what she was handing me. The Chandlers, $155 more a month, den and a garage, laundry hookup in the unit. Honestly, it's my favorite floor plan we've got. $155 a month. For 14 months, my mother had explained that difference to me as the whole building went up. Josephine, inflation, the world is cruel. My mother had not been keeping her head above water. She had been adding a den and a garage to the boat and mailing me the fuel bill. I thanked Denise. I asked for a copy of both pages. I walked past the fireplace and the piano playing for no one. and I sat down in my car in the visitor spot and did not start the engine for 11 minutes. I put my hand in my coat pocket, the way you do when you're looking for keys, and what my fingers found was a strip of plastic with my mother's name printed on it. Then I typed 4 words into my phone: forgery, Indiana, penalty, code 35-43-5-2, level 6 felony, 6 months to 2.5 years. I read the whole page, twice. Then I turned my phone face down on the passenger seat and drove to work. I want to stop here and ask you something. For most people, it isn't the big betrayal that finally does it. It's one small detail that doesn't fit. A date that's wrong, a receipt in the wrong pocket, a story told twice with 2 different weather reports. Mine was a missing period in an email address. What was yours? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and I've learned more from that section than I have from anybody with a degree. I told Ruthie that night, not all of it, enough. She listened the whole way through without one interruption, which for Ruthie is a form of respect. Then she set down her coffee. Everybody's going to ask you why she keeps taking. That's the wrong question, and it'll keep you spinning another 6 years, and I'd know. So what's the right one? Ask what she's buying. Nobody forges a name over $155 a month. Honey, rent is the invoice. She stood up and pulled her badge off the table. Find the product. Barb sent me the listing on a Tuesday with 4 exclamation points. Delaware Avenue, 1 story, butter yellow, gutters that needed love, creaky oak floors, a kitchen older than me, and afternoon light that fell across the empty dining nook so exactly that I could see a table there, and chairs, and people who came because they wanted to. Out front, there was a porch swing hanging off one broken hook. It tilted hard to the left, like it had given up halfway through a sentence. I took a picture of it on the sidewalk and made it my lock screen before I got back in the car. Barb watched me do it and grinned. That's a symptom. I've seen it before. There's no cure. 2 days later, Ruben Ortiz called me from 3 Rivers. Ruben had pre-approved me the previous spring. He is patient and he is kind, and he does not waste your time. And I could hear in the first 4 words that he was about to be honest with me. Josie, I can't get this through underwriting. Okay. On paper, you're carrying $1847 a month for an apartment you don't live in. That guarantee is a contingent liability. It counts against your debt to income, whether you're the one writing the check or not. And you are the one writing the check. What if I show you it's her lease? To exclude it, I'd need 12 consecutive months of documentation proving somebody else made those payments from their own funds. 12 months, and the somebody else is you. I sat down on the edge of my bed. I'm going to say this plain, because I'd want somebody to say it to me. As far as this bank is concerned, you already have a house, you just don't get to sleep in it. That was the sentence that ended it. Not the trip, not the bag, not even the signature. A man in a call center in Fort Wayne did arithmetic out loud, and the arithmetic did not care how I felt about my mother. I hung up and I understood that this had stopped being a question about love. It had become a question about which house I was going to pay for. There was no version where I paid for both. That Sunday, I told my sister. Tess put the kids down and made coffee at 9 at night, and I opened my laptop on her counter. My statements. Nothing stolen, nothing snooped. 6 years of grocery cards, 5 of insurance, 4 of rent. The jump nobody could explain, and 2 pages I'd asked Denise to print. Tess reads the way accountants read, left to right, top to bottom, no reactions. I watched the color go out of her face by rows. She got to the bottom of the column, She sat back. $106,000. 400. She laughed once, with no humor in it at all. And then she said the thing I did not expect. She never took $1 from me, Tess. No, listen. She took 11 Thanksgivings, 11 Christmases, every Easter since Dad left. She told me she couldn't host anymore because her place was too small. She put both hands flat on the counter. Josie, her place has a den. I know. 23 days of unpaid leave. That's what I've got in a folder upstairs. Every doctor's appointment, every pharmacy run, every time she needed somebody to sit in a waiting room. The district gives you 3 personal days a year, and I was out of mine by March, 8 years running. She was crying by then, which Tess does not do. And here's what I can't get past. She told me you were the one who never helped. She said, Teresa, you're the only one I can count on. Your sister has her own little life. I felt something reorganize in my chest. She told me you didn't believe me. She didn't split us. Tess wiped her face with the back of her wrist. She assigned us. I was the good one, and you were the selfish one. And neither of us ever compared notes. Because why would you compare notes with somebody you've been told is empty? She wanted to burn it down that night, print the spreadsheet, staple it, read it out loud at Thanksgiving like a shareholder report. I said no. I'm not doing to her what she does to me. No audience, no ambush. I'm just going to stop. She stared at me a long moment, jaw working. Then she exhaled and squeezed my hand. Okay, your call, but I'm done covering for her, and if it comes up at my table, I will not lie. 2 days later, Aunt Bunny got on the phones. Mom was coming to Thanksgiving with an announcement. Arizona, somewhere warm for her health. And then the load-bearing sentence. She'll need the kids to help her get set up. I built a door instead of a bomb. I want to be honest that it took me 3 drafts. I bought a stiff manila envelope and I filled it. 3 apartments she could carry on her own. New Haven, Waynedale, Georgetown, $780 to $940 a month, real addresses, printed with the office number circled, an appointment card for Brightpoint, the nonprofit downtown, financial counseling, free. A cashier's check for $900 with the memo line filled in, so there could be no argument about it later. Security deposit, not cash. And 1 page in my own handwriting listing what I was offering instead of money. Sundays, moving day, every doctor's appointment, driving and waiting and everything after. I brought it over on a Thursday to drop off her spare key. The kitchen light was off. She was sitting at the table in the dark with a stack of paper in front of her. And when I got closer, I saw they weren't bills. They were brochures, nursing homes, long-term care facilities out on Illinois Road and up past DuPont. She had kept them. The rate sheets were circled in ballpoint. She didn't perform. She didn't reach for her chest. She just spoke very quietly. And she did not look at me. Your Nonna died in a room with 3 other women and a curtain between the beds. She was in that room 14 months. I was 24 years old, and I could not get her out. Mom. I made myself a promise in a hallway in 1984. That's all it ever was, Josephine. A girl standing in a hallway making a promise. For 4 seconds, I could have touched my mother. Then the mask came back, precise, immediate, almost audible, like a deadbolt. Anyway, I'll need $800 for Christmas. Unless you'd like your mother to be the only one at that table with nothing to give. I put the envelope on the counter and told her I'd think about it. She asked me to move a dresser before I left, because my visits have always had job titles. And while we walked it away from the wall, something slid off the back edge and hit the carpet. A leather notebook, spine cracked, cover soft as an old wallet. It fell open. There were 3 hands in it. The first pages were 1949, and the handwriting was a child's. Round, careful, pressing too hard. That was my grandmother. Aurelia, at 9 or 10, keeping her own account under somebody's supervision. School shoes, $4.50. Doctor visit, $6. The middle of the book was 1978. Slanted, tighter. A teenager's. My mother's. School shoes, $18. Piano, $6 a lesson. Winter coat. 2 columns marched down every page. Always and repaid. And in the repaid column, in both hands, across 30 years, ironing, Saturdays, silence at the table, the third column was blank. My mother crossed the room faster than I have ever seen her move and took it out of my hands. And for one unguarded second, before the mask reassembled, I watched a 64-year-old woman turn into a 15-year-old girl waiting to be told what today had cost. I paid my mother back every penny by my wedding day, she said, almost proud, almost pleading. It is the only thing I am certain she ever told me that was completely true. I understand exactly why my mother counts. I still don't owe her $1. Both of those are true at the same time. And anyone who tells you they can't be has never had to hold them both. 2 days later, I went back to Denise. I filed a signature dispute, notarized affidavit, both pages. My scheduling records for that Tuesday in September. I did it to protect myself, not to punish anyone. Denise did not process it right away. She put her hands flat on the desk first. I have to tell you what happens next, because it isn't up to me. Once you file, corporate compliance reviews it. If they find the signature isn't yours, they're required to refer it out. That's policy, not a choice. And I can't unfile it for you either. She slid the pen across. So take a minute. I sat there for 3 seconds. Then I signed my own name, closed loop and all. That night, I sat on my bed with my phone and opened the banking app. There it was, where it had lived for 4 years. Automatic, first of the month, 5A. My thumb hovered over that toggle longer than it has ever hovered over anything at work. And I have pushed buttons with a child's heart rate on the other side of them. Green to gray. The app asked me if I was sure. If you have ever scheduled a payment for an hour you knew you couldn't watch, comment the word toggle. You don't have to explain it. I'll know exactly what you mean. A week before the holiday, Nell clipped my taillight with her bike in Tessa's driveway, 8 years old, horrified, already apologizing before the plastic finished falling. And I heard my own voice come out of my mouth. That's okay, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. Aunt Josie will just remember it. I stopped in the middle of the sentence. Tess turned around from the garage door. Neither of us said anything. I lay awake that night thinking about a blank third column. Thanksgiving at my sister's is a production. 19 people, the good tablecloth, the folding table bolted onto the end for the cousins, the kids' card table in the den. Doug frying the turkey outside in a pot he treats like a race car. My father was there because he is Tess's father. She said that out loud to the room when he walked in that flat way she has, so nobody would have to wonder. He parked at the quiet end in his one nice sweater, sneaking Sam black olives for his fingers. I brought rolls. I hung my coat on the hook by the door. My mother arrived 40 minutes late, which is standard, late enough to make an entrance, never late enough to miss anything. Camel coat, fresh blowout, and the chestnut leather bag riding her forearm like a small trophy. She hugged her way down the room person by person and gave me the version with no arms in it. Grace was said, plates were loaded, and then, right on schedule, a sigh pitched for the whole table. I manage alone. That's what I've learned this year. You find out who your children are when you get old. Bunny patted her hand. A cousin's wife made a sympathetic mouth. I ate my green beans. But my father, down at the quiet end, had gone completely still, fork down. Watching his ex-wife with the frown, he saves for an engine telling him one thing on the gauge and something else through the floor. It was Dana who lit it, without knowing. Joe, how's the house hunt? I kept it small. I'd planned to keep the whole day small. Found one. Actually, it's yellow. The porch swing hangs crooked and I love it. A warm ripple went around the table. Doug whooped. Dana clapped. Tess squeezed my knee under the cloth. And my father's face broke open into the first full smile I'd seen on him in a year. For about 4 seconds, it was the nicest thing my family had produced in a decade. Then I heard my mother set her fork down on her plate. One precise click of metal on china. She laughed. Loud, bright, aimed. The table hushed around it. A house, you, Josephine, sweetheart, you can barely keep yourself alive in that little room you rent. You bring rolls from a tube and you drive a car that sounds like a can opener. She looked around, gathering her audience the way she gathers everything. Then she leaned forward, eyes shining, and delivered it with the tenderness of a guillotine. How does it feel to be a freeloader, Josephine? 19 people, an oven timer ticking, somewhere in the kitchen, a neighbor's dog outside. I set my napkin beside my plate. I got up, walked to the hook by the door, and took the thing out of my coat pocket. Then I came back and laid a plastic hospital bracelet on the tablecloth beside her plate. She didn't have to look closely. She knew what it was from 4 feet away. Feels fine, Mom. I stopped paying your rent on the 1st. Her smile didn't fall. It froze. Stuck to her face half a second past its expiration, which is so much worse. Then it slid off all at once and left nothing behind it but arithmetic. I heard my father before I saw him, chair legs barking against the floor. Rent? What rent? I told him. No spreadsheet, no phone, no raised voice, just facts laid out plain, like instruments on a tray. 6 years, groceries, insurance, rent, guarantor, the unit with the den, Riviera Maya, while she told me she was at a retreat in Brown County. He gripped the chair back until the wood complained. Josephine pays my rent, my mother said, choosing the tone of a woman explaining something tedious to staff. Children help their mothers. Edward, not that you'd understand family. My father did not look at her when he answered. He looked at the table. There's language in the decree says I'm not to discuss the terms. I've kept it 8 years. Then he did look at her. Colette, I gave you $168,000, $121 from the house, $47 from the buyout when the plant closed. I kept the pension. You took the cash so you'd never have to worry, so our girls would never have to carry you. The room did that impossible thing where 17 people stop existing at once. Let them sue me. Where did it go? For a moment, my mother sat perfectly still. Then she stood, pressed both hands flat on Tess's good tablecloth, and found the full house voice, the one that filled churches and cowed pharmacists. Then choose, Josephine. You walk out that door. You are no daughter of mine. Not at Christmas. Not at my funeral. I stood up and pushed my chair in. Because Tess's floors are nice. People keep asking what $106,000 buys. Let me read you the receipt. It bought the yellow house on Sycamore that sold to somebody else in 48 hours. It bought 6 Christmases where I told Nell her present was in the mail. And it bought a mother who, at a table of 19 people, asked me how it feels to be a freeloader. The counseling appointment is paid for. The apartment list is on your counter. That offer doesn't expire. Mom, you can have my Sundays. You cannot have my paycheck. I left the bracelet where it was. It had never been mine. I pulled the door shut with a click, soft as a decimal point. I got as far as the porch steps before my father came out and stood at the rail. I made sure your mother was set, prided myself on it. Never once checked who was setting you. He put his hand on my shoulder, heavy as a toolbox, and left it there. That was the whole speech, and it was enough. My phone lit up in the car, voicemail, 47 seconds. Fury first, at 15 seconds, grief, then, unbearably, sweetness. You were my little shadow, my helper. If she had stopped there, I might have cried in that dark car. She didn't. It closed with the toll booth. Fix this by Sunday or don't ever call me again. One last performance of the only song she knew. I didn't call back. I texted the counselor's name, the date, and one line, the offer stands, J. December 1st came, and at 5 in the morning it took nothing from me. I hung an antibiotic at 4:58 and another at 5:15. In between, nothing happened. Nothing has never felt so much like something. The rent at Chandler Ridge was paid on time, in full. So was January. The money was never missing. Only the excuse was, compliance found the signature wasn't mine and referred it out. Exactly as Denise said they'd have to. My mother got a letter from a law firm she has never mentioned to me. She didn't renew. She moved into a one-bedroom in New Haven, one of 3 addresses in a certain manila envelope. She did not transform. People mostly don't. She adapted. Her ledger is still open, just not on my page anymore. 3 weeks later, my father set an envelope on my table. Not cash, a check for $14,000. 4 years of truck money. I said no. I'm not paying you back for her. I'm paying you back for me. I stopped checking. Take it or don't. I'm not carrying it another 6 years. I took it. Not because I needed it. Because refusing would have been keeping score, and I had just gotten out of that business. Ruthie found me charting that week. She's not going to change, Josie. Mine didn't. I'm 66 and I'm still waiting on a woman who's been dead since 2009. Stop waiting. That's the whole trick, honey. I kept looking for a second one. There isn't a second one. My first week on Delaware Avenue. I printed temporary.xlsx and burned it in the backyard. Deleting is what you do when you want to forget. Burning is what you do when you've decided not to hand it down. This Thanksgiving happened at the Yellow House. Dad carved. Nell and Sam fixed the porch swing and hung it crooked on purpose. It looks like it's waving, Nell explained, dead serious, on the refrigerator. In 8-year-old capitals, no one owes anyone. Everybody brings a dish. We set one chair that stayed empty. The invitation went through Bunny and came back declined, its own kind of answer. In April, a birthday card came. No apology, no invoice. Twice a month, on Sundays. I still drive her to the store. She talks. I drive. Sundays were the offer, and I keep my word. Real love doesn't keep a ledger. It just keeps showing up. And the day I stopped paying to be loved was the day I found out who had been loving me for free the whole time. But I still don't know one thing. She asked for those Sunday runs back, and I said yes. Was that healing? Or did I just move the payment to a different account? Tell me honestly in the comments. If this reminded you that you can love your family without funding them, share it with someone who's still paying. Subscribe, and I'll see you at the next table.